talk about fungicides. Now, this is an area that I was not actually thinking of Dr. Davis being here, but I was definitely going to be talking about her in this this section because she has, in the beginning, really given me a push to look at this area. And we did a SERA grant, which I would encourage anybody who would like to do some research to go ahead and do. They haven't been doing ginseng very much. And it was on natural fungicides. Now, unfortunately, we had two really bad situations. One where we were robbed and a lot of the roots were disturbed. And the second was a management problem that occurred. So we don't have absolutely qualifying statements. So what I want you to do is take what I say with a grain of salt and try and prove it yourself. But there are areas out there that this has been so swept under the rug, it's kind of irritating. Because there's absolutely no reason in the world to take a root that does not want a fungicide on it normally and start spraying the hell out of it. This is a common practice with Wisconsin roots from September, from April till September. They are spraying every single day. The main aspect of this was astounding to me, that we would take the best plant on the planet and then go ahead and throw funguses in it so that the plant actually then retained a lot of this residue. It, to me, is a question of greed that somebody would do this. There's no real logical reason why you would take a root, and in my case, I don't use the word contaminate anymore. I just go to poisoning. You have to take a huge amount of vitamin E, as an example, of one of our elements that can reduce the body's fungicidal residue concentrate. But they don't tell you what this is when you buy a root. They don't tell you that it has residues. They don't test for residues. All of the stuff coming in from China, they're not giving us anything good. They're just giving us the worst of the worst. And the joke that I found so incredible when I went up to Wisconsin was those guys were totally convinced that the Asian market was buying their poisoned roots. They didn't realize that they could tell the product so easily in Hong Kong and then just take those poison roots and send them right back to us. And that's what we have in our health food stores right now. If you go in and you're going to buy a ginseng product, you're basically getting a product with residue fungicides. Now, I felt that it was our duty as growers of this plant to produce the highest quality that we could. Now, the stats are somewhere around 90% of all ginseng in the world is sprayed with fungicidal residues. There is hardly any left, except our wild and wild simulated, that's organic. And yet, the Hong Kong Chinese have been masterful brand makers. They have branded ginseng so people say, oh, it's ginseng, it got to be good for me. It's like they've used it 5,000 years and it's done its trick. The Panax ginseng from Asia. So what we have is a situation where the majority of the ginseng is not good. The herbalists don't want to use it because they don't want to tell their people go take ginseng because they don't know if it's good ginseng. This is a major problem in the situation out there right now, to me. And I've been kind of on this quest since we've done the 2008 SIRA project to figure out how we could use natural fungicides instead of chemical fungicides. So the first thing that happened was that Dr. Davis did a study, or did not a total grant study, I think, and she's here so we can ask her. It was a study where she had some ginseng in a bed. It didn't do well. It went down. She put golden seal in the bed, grew it out, did fine, came back, did some ginseng in that bed. It did fine. So obviously the connection between antifungal golden seal and ginseng that has a fungal problem have been known for a long time. The Native American Indians used to consider them brother and sister plant because not only did they grow together, but they helped each other. So the first thing that I started doing with that knowledge was to take my golden seal, put it into a container, usually glass, that has boiling water in it. Put the golden seal in, chopped it up, and put it out in the sun for a day. After that day, you're going to have a very, very high concentration of golden seal. And you can take that golden seal then and put it into a watering can, a little bit, fill it up with water, and then take those beds and do a wash with the golden seal. I've been doing that for many, many years. We don't have any research on it that is scientific, but my ginseng seems to do a lot better with golden seal washes. And the study that we did back in 2001, I think it was, that study indicated that we were doing this to most of the beds. They were either beds that had nothing done to them, or beds that had a golden seal wash on them. And the golden seal wash beds visually at the end of the project looked a lot better than the other beds. So to my thinking, golden seal is a way for us to help the funguses down below. But what about the funguses, the airborne funguses? So in that project, we looked at 5 different scenarios. We looked at Dr. Elaine Ingham's compost tea formula. We looked at golden seal. We looked at horsetail. And we had some one other one that right now I'm not thinking well about, and then we had nothing, blind stuff. That visually showed to me that the horsetail was the best aerially that we could get. Now, the only major problem for me with the spray is that every time it rains, you gotta spray. Other than that, it goes back to Dr. Elaine Ingham's statement when she came to a Carolina Farm Stewardship meeting where she was studying funguses. And the funguses that she was looking at indicated that there are not all funguses are bad, but there are good funguses. So if we can take a good fungus and spray it on the plant, the bad fungus, in theory, won't be able to attach itself. So we looked at these aerial sprays, and the horsetail we got from a place up in Virginia. It's the Biodynamics 508 horsetail spray, 1 unit. I think this whole bag was $5 and it cost $6 to get it to me. I've been using this since the late 90s. You don't need a lot of it. It is, to me, one of the foliated answers that is out there. Also, horsetail is the only of a plant that has the most silica and is the oldest plant on the planet. So the oldest plant helping the plant that is considered king of the plant world is very apropos to me. Now, when I came into this situation of farming ginseng and getting involved with it, I was not knowledgeable at all. And I went to, coming out of real estate, to a concept that if you want to learn about this stuff, you go to the best people who are out there and you just hang out with them, and they will eventually teach you what you need to know. And for many years I did this. One situation, though, that I just want to reiterate when I came into the field was a concept of spraying that I found to be troubling. Out of a ginseng grower's calendar, of course it was back in the 80s when this was written, it says that from May through September, the materials and equipment used on the task of spraying, plant removal, drenching, organic for disease control, and sending for disease control. The list considers fungicides, chamomile tea, and formaldehyde as an industry standard back in the 80s. Obviously, that's not even considered today, and nobody talks about it. But it just goes, in my estimation, to show what people would use to spray the plant so that it wouldn't have the disease, but not caring at all whether it was transferred to the plant. Time has been interesting on this subject. And I think that with the advent of wild simulated ginseng growing, this is now going to be key to organic production. That we just need to get the fungicide situation down so it's natural, biodegradable, and is not going to cause any kind of health problem by people taking it. There are areas that in my 22 years of being a ginseng dealer, I have run across people, and you will not believe this, but they spray ammonia, bleach, and hydrogen peroxide. Now, the biggest problem to me with those kinds of chemicals is not the fact that we have absolutely no written knowledge about how any of this stuff interacts with the plant. And so there are standard ginseng protocols for seeds that include a 10% solution of bleach. And you wash them. If the seeds touch each other and the moisture's there, you can get a fungus. And how many bags I've thrown out of seeds that have totally gone off the chart as far as fungus in the bed. So, and those were usually the seeds that did not get the 10% solution. So I am not against using something like this on a seed. The question is, we need the research to find out, will 1% solution of bleach every 3 weeks work to preserve your plants? The process of the plant coming up, hanging out, and going down has a number of times when this situation will come into being. And you have to be in a very high management mode to find it and correct it. I believe that in the near future, this type of research will start to come about, especially with all of the stuff that we seem to be happening to not only create an American market versus the Hong Kong market, but that American market in what they want and how they want it is different. As we've just heard from Chip that the newest ginseng craze is to have green or fresh ginseng. It is still a mystery to me, other than the fact that usually if they get a green root, it has the head on it and the neck, and they can tell exactly how old it is. But the reality is, from the herbal world, is that the green and a fresh root is not going to carry the medicine of a dry root because it has so much water. So for the amount that you take dry, you have to increase it 4 times to just get that potency. People are not, it's now become a new fad to the extent of getting these fresh roots. The time window on it is really small. When I talk to people who want that kind of product, they have to put money up so that the day I get it, we are talking about 2 days max getting it to the person. There's not even really an opportunity to get your money to you and get the root out in that time frame normally. So you just have this little tiny window, but it's a niche. It's definitely a niche that is rising. The problem is most of those people hear it, and then they start to, instead of calling you August 15th, they're calling you November, when the season's all over, and there is no more fresh. And they want to pay all kinds of money because they heard that this is great for them. But the reality is that this small, tiny window with fresh is also a situation that if we learn about this process in production, we can preserve that longer than just 3 days that I usually have now, before even in the refrigerator it starts to turn to be a dry root. And there's that process of losing 75% of the moisture that obviously has moisture, meaning fungus. And so how are you protecting the seed, the plant, and the finished products with this craziness that ginseng has with fungus? It's almost a love-hate relationship, I would believe, that they love to have places where it seems to want to grow, but they don't want it there when it gets there. So I have been concerned that this one issue is like in a production line, one of those little places where everything gets backed up. And if you don't open this up with some chamomile sprays and horsetail sprays and all of the other things that we can know through research will help as natural fungicides, we are going to change the industry. Because the industry right now is based on the fact that the large operations are going to be spraying something, and the smaller wild simulated operations are going to try and spread their product out so they never have to spray. And in fact, when I was talking to Chip last night, his method of growing with pots in the ground, it doesn't have as much of a fungus problem. So it's not really a major concern to him. The concern happens with two things. One, bigness, and you can't get to it in time. And two is the fact that the operations that really make sense with ginseng in wild stimulated conditions are small plots. Exactly what Janine was saying. You have a plot here, you have a plot there. They all can be in kind of the same area, but they're not all together. Soon as we start running into monoculture, ginseng only in ginseng beds, the problem of the plants coming up, overlapping leaves, perfect place for a little home for ginseng, is there. And you're going to have to deal with that fungus. Otherwise, it will take out the crop. So spreading it out is probably the first line of defense to not using chemical fungicides. And then the second line of defense is to start using these natural fungicides, Golden Seal for the soil, and a bunch of others for aerials, in my opinion. Then the product is going to continue on in in a healthier state. There is one little tiny area that I believe has a lot of growth for research. When does the ginseng root on the bottom stop growing? And at that point, can we then start taking green leaves for tea, which right now we just throw on the forest floor, and that we can then monitor the growth of that, maximized during the spring and summer, and then starting the harvest of the leaves and the berries and then the roots as it goes down the line. And all of this obviously has to be controlled for funguses. It's a major problem for growing ginseng or storing it.